Good afternoon from Helsinki, and thank you for inviting me to speak in this conference. It's a great honor. Finland joined United Nations 1956 and has been twice in Security Council, 69, 70 and 89, 90. 2012, Finland was a candidate but failed against Luxembourg because we didn't have clean slate, and I will use a couple of words to explain this later on. For Finland, the UN membership was not an easy issue for a difficult geopolitical situation after the World War II. Our President Paasikivi was very skeptical long time that whether it is useful at all to be there to vote against the Soviet Union, for instance, which would cause bilateral problems. It would be better to stay outside for national security reasons. But as membership was finally accepted, Finland's goal in the US was to pursue policy line which would permit us to strengthen neutrality, which in our case was also a hidden method to say no to the Soviet Union. But the Soviet diplomats were clever enough to understand this hidden goal, and then they complicated our work in the UN and also later on in the OSCE, because they feared that in case we strengthen our international position inside these institutions, they would lose their influence in Finland. And this, of course, was a fact of life. Furthermore, the military non-alignment offered an opportunity to play a strong role in peacekeeping and conflict resolution in the UN during the era of East-West conflict. In 1969-70, in the midst of the Cold War, during our first term in the Security Council, the agenda of the Council consisted to a large extent of other African and Middle East problems. Finland had balanced diplomatic relations to all countries in the region, and which helped very much to play a constructive role in the Security Council. And experienced Finnish Lieutenant General Ensio Siilasvuo was appointed to commander of UNEF 2, United Nations Emergency Force, in 1969. Regarding the vote on the arson attack on Al-Aqsa Mosque on 21st August 1969, the UN responded by condemning the attack and called on Israel to avoid all arrangements that would alter the status of Jerusalem. Many Muslims believed the attack had been orchestrated by Israel. Also, the attacker was an Austrian man with mental problems, and protests erupted across the Middle East, however. On September 15, 1969, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 271, which grieved at the extensive damage caused by the fire and condemned Israel for failing to respect UN resolutions. Finland tried to find a compromise language. The resolution was adopted by 11 votes to none. Colombia, Finland, Paraguay, and the United States abstained, which caused criticism inside the leftist parties at home and the communist camp internationally, but strengthened our prestige in the West. Our permanent representative Max Jacobson introduced a number of initiatives which were objected either by the Soviet Union or the United States. The Foreign Minister of Ireland, Patrick Hillery, was invited to speak to the Council about the violent incidents in Northern Ireland in August 1970, based on the request of the Jacobson. The UK had tried to block the invitation but failed. In order to strengthen the UN, Jacobson also invited the foreign ministers of the members of the Security Council to meet in a joint session in October 1970 for the first time in the history of the Council. The first speaker was Finland's Foreign Minister Väinö Leskinen, but the initiative did not get support in the long term. Jacobson also killed an initiative of the United States to limit the UN membership only to the countries having more than 1 million people. He delivered the shortest speech in the history of the Security Council, "Goodbye Iceland." The initiative was buried. Jacobson himself became one of the leading candidates to replace U Thant, and I think his role in the Security Council played a role that he became a prominent candidate to replace U Thant as Secretary General. In December 1971, he was vetoed either by the Soviet Union or the United States, and Kurt Waldheim of Austria was chosen. And it was rumored in the Finnish foreign ministry that our delegation in New York was aware about Waldheim's wartime background, but this information was not used. The first 2 years in the Security Council was important for the national prestige and foreign policy to strengthen neutrality in general. Regarding the initiatives, the issues related to Namibia and anti-apartheid and, as mentioned, to the Middle East problems were advanced as a result, in my view, of Finland's activity in the Security Council. In 1989-1990 was during the second term as a non-member, the Cold War was ending, and the new world order based on the principles of the UN reflected the agenda of the Security Council. For the first time, the UN agreed upon the use of force based on the Charter concerning the occupation of Kuwait by Iraq on August 2, 1990, and you may remember that Gorbachev and Bush met in Helsinki in September 1990. For the first time, the UN agreed, and we know that US is not a pacifist organization, and this debate was taking place during those days. And Kofi Annan has reminded about this role of the UN many times. The Finnish permanent representative Klaus Tjörnud was one of our most experienced qualified diplomats, like Jacobson. In May 1990, he chaired the council's session in Geneva because Yasser Arafat was not permitted to travel to the United States, and the council wanted to listen to him on the Israel-Palestine conflict and the situation in the occupied territories. Tjörnud supported plans to deploy peacekeeping forces to the occupied territories to protect the civilians. Later on, Tjörnud chaired a working group of the Security Council which facilitated a consensus on a resolution about the occupied territories, which was a major achievement personally for Tjörnud, but for the Security Council in particular. In Tjörnud's view, Finland was able to play a constructive role because she had good relations with all countries in the region and was not entirely associated with the US-led Western camp. This is what he said in a recent interview. Actually, I was able to pick for this statement. Finally, just a few words about failed campaign. For the period 2013-14, there are several reasons for this less impressive voting result against Luxembourg. We didn't have a clean slate, as you know. Since 69, 89, the UN has changed in particular as a result of the increase of the number of the member states. I remember very well when Austria, my younger colleague Lutterotti told me in the UN when I was serving the president of the General Assembly 2008 that the most important lesson regarding the successful campaign for them was that you should not trust the confirmations you received before the voting in the General Assembly? I understand that you received 20, 30 less votes than confirmed by letters of the member states. This was at least, we in Helsinki failed to understand this lesson, to be quite frank. In 2012, in October, the Finnish campaign team was underestimated three factors. They underestimated the three factors. First, it didn't secure support of our home base, the Western European and other states. Second, the strategy of the campaign was based on an overestimation of our prestige, in particular in the African countries. Third, the team may have not been quite up to the job. You have to have experienced and appreciated people in the team to run the campaign, in particular in New York. I do not blame our diplomats, but good performance is not enough. You have to impress the member states, and your foreign policy must be strongly supported in the Western European group, because the African and Asian countries get information about the situation in the group and they follow the suit. To sum up, one, having been a non-member in the Security Council has been very beneficial for Finland in terms of her foreign policy and prestige, as well as image both times. Two, Finland's permanent representatives have been up to the job, which facilitated a positive outcome, in particular when chairing the Security Council. The proposed initiatives to strengthen the UN system, as well as compromises regarding the drafting of the key resolution, can be evaluated as our merits. And in 2012, the failure to win a seat for the third time was, as I already mentioned, result of number of reasons. But also I would like to add that perhaps the selected teams for the campaign profile can be discussed. But of course, we have been discussing whether the NATO membership, that Finland is a non-aligned country, and also having strong ties with Russia, that whether we, as a member of the European Union, and this is now very much my personal view, whether this membership in the European Union should also be incorporated with the membership in NATO to safeguard the support in Western European group. This is not a problem of Switzerland if you have a clean slate, for instance. And as you already recognized that Austria had difficulties to be elected 2008. So that, and okay, Sweden was elected, but Estonia managed to get in. So that this is issue that we have to discuss openly, at least in Finland. And this part of my statement is very much reflecting my personal experiences and my personal views. So that with these words, thank you very much once again, and good luck for Switzerland to get the seat when you are really tested. And I hope you don't get any other candidates. You get a clean slate. Thank you.